Said earlier, Tom loved to laugh. Tom was a great brother to me, to our family. We shared many wonderful and fun times together over the years, and a lot of great memories. So let's reflect on who Tom was as a person. Tom was a son. He was a brother. He was an uncle. He was a great uncle. And he was a friend. Tom lived life on his own terms. That sounds like something you might say about anybody, like a cliche. But with him, it was pretty true. Technical moment. Thank you for your support. Right or wrong, Tom had principles and he rarely compromised. For example, I remember several times over the years, he would get into an argument with his bank about an overcharge, or his cable company about something that wasn't working with his service. And after a few calls and some heated arguments, with of course some choice language, he finally, not being able to get the issue resolved, unlike most people, he might live with the transgression, but he would immediately and with great conviction cancel his service or close his account. He made his decision, and you know what? He lived with it. Sometimes to his own detriment, even though he would never admit it. He stood up for what he believed in, even when it wasn't good for him or would cause a rift in the family or with his friends. He could certainly hold a grudge, but
Oh, yeah.
He didn't want you to say that.
dramatic pause. But in the end, it always seemed to work out itself out. It's because he knew how important the people who were close to him were, the people that he loved. Tom was a loyal person to people who were important to him, and he could be harsh to those who weren't. He didn't tolerate cheaters, those who didn't tell the truth, or hypocrites. He was principled. Dramatic pause. For me, Tom was always dependable. If I needed help with anything, if I had a question, needed advice, I just asked. He was there. He was always there when I needed him. He was a great advisor on many things, especially those that were mechanical. He could fix almost anything, or find a way to get it fixed. I'm jumping around, but I should mention his school days growing up, because you probably want to know a little bit about it. Grammar school at St. Mary's in Rutherford, I think. I think it was St. Mary's. He might have went to Rutherford. And then he went to collegiate private school in Passaic, which I looked up on the internet today and found out they're still in business after 50 years, and I even still think they have the same headmaster, which Tom clearly didn't care for. But you know what the best thing about Collegiate was for him? His lifelong friends, Mark and Tim, who he met, and Dave in the back. That was for him something that was so close to his heart, to the very end. Then he made a brief stint at college, probably most of you don't even know this, in Boca Raton, Florida. I think he lasted about a semester. It just wasn't for him. I remember him leaving for college in his brand new, used car. It was a 70 era's blue Mustang Fastback, which must have led him to some adventures, and certainly his love of cars that lasted him his lifetime. Tom and I worked after that for a while together at my dad's company, or companies, I should say. He had a truck and container repair business, International Container Repair, Dependable Container Repair, and Universal Container Parts. We worked in the warehouse together, and then when I left for school in California, he stayed here and continued to work for the companies in different locations around the company. New Jersey, Philadelphia, Baltimore, Charleston, New Orleans, and maybe a few other places that I haven't mentioned. Over the years, he also worked for other people and companies in the trucking container industry. And I remember a funny story that my son Peter and I were talking about this morning when he told us about the Buffalo trash train. It was a company that he worked for. You could probably Google it, but they hauled about 400 cars of trash from New York City to Buffalo. And Tom worked for the company that owned the containers that the trash were in, and they wouldn't let him unload the trash. So they had hundreds of train cars filled with stinky garbage in the summer of 2003, and they were stuck there for months, and so was Tom. One of the funniest stories I ever heard of his work. He also owned his own companies as an owner, a partner, a worker, or a consultant. He continued to work until the very end when he was sick, and he just couldn't do it anymore. You know, I could tell it bothered him, because Tom always wanted to finish every job he started.
Yeah.
That was his nature, and it served him really well. Tom cared for those who were less fortunate than him. And he tried to help other people when he could. I remember another story when he was running one of the repair shops in New Orleans, and the mechanics who worked down there didn't have the proper work boots because they couldn't afford them. This is a true story. So what did Tom do? He went out and he bought them pairs of work boots. And he had the guys pay him back over the next few paychecks. That's the way he was. Here's something you don't know. He was also the artist in the family. With all respect to Liz, because I know she had some artistic talents as well. But Tom truly was our artist.
You did?
She did. She also played softball, and that's another story. But if you want to hear it, just catch her after the show. I remember there was a painting hanging in the house of a forest, it was a snow scene with an evergreen tree that Tom had painted. It hung over the fireplace for years. I just remember that, and I remember his left-handed signature. He was creative and had a creative mind, especially with the kids, his nieces, his nephews, his great nieces, I should say his nieces, his great nieces, and his great nephews who are here today. He could make a cardboard pirate ship over 10 foot long and 4 foot wide out of a refrigerator box for the boys to play with. His ability to entertain kids seemed limitless. It brought him really great joy. He also was the best pumpkin carver in the family and birthday cake maker. He was a good baker. He could make the best cheesecakes. I would always ask him, are you going to make your cheesecake and bring it to the holiday get-together? We always did. Tom loved cars, and I can't remember him ever having a new one, which is a funny thing. They were almost always older, and in some cases needed a lot of work. In fact, you could say he collected cars. You might even call them junkers, he called them classics. He was always working on them for one reason or another, and he loved to make an entrance with those cars by driving up to the house or someplace where the family or friends were on vacation, and he made a grand entrance with his latest acquisition, most likely a convertible with the top down. Tom liked a good television series and loved to talk about the latest episode of Yellowstone, Walking Dead, and on and on. He could tell you all about the plots, the characters. Same thing with most of the blockbuster and adventure action type movies. He really loved that, and he loved hanging out with the kids, with me, with his family, watching those shows together. In fact, when he was in the hospital in New York, I've never seen The Family Guy before. I don't know if you guys have, but it's quite an interesting show. There's a character called Peter, not in relationship to anybody here, but I've never seen it before. I'm hanging out with Tom in the hospital in Sloan Kettering, driving in every day about a year ago this time, and we had a routine. I'd come in, say hi to his roommate, the guy was, and then we'd get in and we'd start watching The Family Guy, and we would laugh and laugh, episode after episode, nurses coming in and out, and all of a sudden we hear from across the curtain, the guy in the next bed laughing along with us. It was fun. By the end of those 4 days, the guy was our best buddy. Tom had dreams of building something for the future. I remember that for most of his life. He finally achieved it with a home he purchased in Jim Thorpe, and he rebuilt it from the studs up, mostly by himself or with the help of his friend Tommy. He loved living in Pennsylvania and the people that he met there. I have my cousin and her husband to thank for that. That house and the area seemed to be his happy place, especially the last few years. I think he finally found contentment in his life, something he searched for. About 4 years ago, he welcomed our sons there, Peter and Henry, and offered them his house to live in without a second thought. They're still there. Karen and I can never thank him enough for that generosity in knowing that they had their Uncle Tom looking out for them. Emotional pause. Thank you. Technical difficulties. Tom was also a scuba diver. Most of you probably don't know that. Joe does. Karen does. Henry does. Peter does. We enjoyed a lot of trips with many people over the years. Florida, Mexico, Grand Cayman, and one cave dive, I remember. This was just me and him at a spot in Laguna Beach, California. I learned about it through an article in a dive magazine, and we had to access the dive spot from the beach by walking into the ocean through the surf. Now, just bear with me here for a second and kind of envision this. Tom and I going down the beach, full gear on, walking backwards because of our fins. You know, Tom wasn't, granted, the healthiest, altogether kind of guy. And we had to go through the surf backwards. And of course, because our fins and our other dive gear on, that's what I was getting to. So picture Tom doing that. That enough was interesting, just the two of us. What fun we had. But you know what happened? We got in the cave, and all of a sudden we didn't realize the ocean surge was going in and out. And we were literally trapped inside the cave.
Oh.
And there wasn't a ceiling to come up through. So between the two of us, we figured out how to work with the surge, and get ourselves out.
Oh, God.
It was quite hairy, I have to tell you, and we got out of there. And I guess I should have read the article a little bit closer. You know, Tom didn't seem to be bothered by the fact that we almost drowned. With some coaxing, you know, he was always up for some fun or an adventure. That's the one thing I do remember. Finally, I'm going to remember Tom for his love of his family and the connections we all shared. The conversations, the discussions, the rants, he had some of those. The opinions, he had a lot of those. The texts we shared, and the hugs. During COVID, I remember he was the one who helped organize the weekly house party app to keep the video calls and the family engaged going, so we could get together, because we couldn't get together in person. He really always looked forward to those weekly calls. Tom left a big impression on me, and he'll be missed greatly. Most of all, I hope he'll always be remembered. I'm going to end with a poem that I did finally take off the internet, so I didn't write it. But it's called A Life Well Lived. A life well lived, a tapestry bright, woven with threads of love and light. Through trials faced and triumphs won, a story told, a life well run. The laughter shared, the tears that fall, lessons learned, embracing all. With open heart and spirit free, a legacy for all to see. Each moment cherished, small and grand, a helping hand, a steady stand. To make a difference, leave your mark, a shining beacon in the dark. A life well lived, a vibrant hue, a masterpiece forever true. With grace and kindness, love and might, a life well lived, a guiding light. Well, now we're going to have a video remembrance of Tom, and then if anyone wants to get up and say a few words, or if you just want to sit in your seat, just let me know. I'll bring the microphone to you. Thank you.